Tell me, what do you believe you have truly understood about women? Here's the cold truth. Everything you were taught about women is wrong. From childhood, they spoon-fed you lies. Fairy tales where the prince wins the princess just by showing up. Romantic comedies where the nice guy gets the girl after chasing her long enough. Songs that told you love means giving her your heart, your soul, your everything, so you tried it. You gave, you chased, you sacrificed, you bent over backwards to be the man she should want. And what happened? She got bored. She lost interest. She left. That's the pain most men carry, but never admit. You followed the script. You did what society told you to do. And instead of love, you got rejection. Instead of respect, you got ignored. Instead of passion, you got ghosted. Here's the part nobody dares to say: women aren't these mysterious, complicated creatures you need to decode like ancient symbols. They're human, and their psychology follows patterns you were never taught to see. Understanding women is both simpler and more complicated than you think. Simpler, because the patterns are real. Complicated, because you've been searching in all the wrong places. This isn't about tricks, pickup lines, or pretending to be someone you're not. This is about finally seeing female psychology for what it is. Once you understand it, you'll stop wasting years chasing women who don't want you. You'll stop overthinking every text, and you'll finally start living with confidence instead of confusion. Stay with me, because once you see the truth, you'll never go back to the lies. And here's where it gets worse. After swallowing those lies, most men end up trapped in their own heads. They become detectives in their own love lives. Every text she sends feels like a puzzle you have to solve. She replies, "Okay," instead of "okay." Must mean she's mad. 1 emoji instead of 3. She must be losing interest. She adds a period at the end of her sentence. She probably hates me. You sit there like Sherlock Holmes, rewinding every word, analyzing tone, punctuation, timing. You even bring your friends into it like a crime investigation. Meanwhile, do you know what she's doing? She's half asleep on her couch, eating chips, watching Netflix, and she's already forgotten she even texted you. Here's the painful paradox: you're obsessing over moments she doesn't even remember. Women aren't running your messages through a secret female committee. They're not analyzing your every move the way you analyze theirs. They live in the moment. Their emotions in that moment drive their response, not your perfectly calculated strategy. I'll give you an example. When I was 22, there was this girl I thought was out of my league. I studied her schedule. I knew where she got coffee, what books she read. I planned my approach like I was working for the CIA. Finally, I talked to her, but she wasn't interested. Her cat was sick that day. Nothing I said mattered. 2 weeks later, I bumped into her at a party. I made a dumb comment about the music being too loud. Nothing smooth, nothing clever, but this time she was laughing, relaxed, open, and that stupid line turned into a 2-year relationship. Why? Because attraction doesn't follow logic. Women don't fall for the perfect words. They fall for the right feelings in the right moment. The more you try to control the outcome, the less control you actually have. You can't force the weather to change. You can only notice if it's sunny or raining and act accordingly. Women's emotions don't work like a math equation. They work like the weather. Some days it's sunny, some days it's cloudy. Some days a storm just rolls in out of nowhere. And just like the weather, you don't control it. You only respond to it. But most men, they spend their whole life trying to change the weather. They think if they wear the right clothes, say the right words, or earn the right amount of money, They can make it sunny every single day. That's a lie. A woman's mood, her openness to connection, her attraction, it shifts constantly. It's influenced by a million different factors. Maybe she had a fight with her mom. Maybe she's stressed at work. Maybe she skipped lunch. Maybe her favorite TV show just got canceled. None of it has anything to do with you, yet it changes everything about how she feels in the moment. You are one variable in an equation with thousands of variables. And here's the paradox: the more you try to control it, the less control you actually have. I learned this the hard way. Back in college, I thought attraction was something you could engineer. I studied body language, memorized lines, even practiced the perfect smile in the mirror. I believed I could predict and control her reaction. But the truth, sometimes the most thought-out plan fell flat, and sometimes the dumbest, most random moment turned into real connection. That's when it hit me. You can't bend her emotions to your will. You can only meet her where she is. If it's raining, bring an umbrella. If it's sunny, enjoy the sun. But don't fool yourself into thinking you control the sky. And this is where men waste years of their life trying to force sunshine. They believe attraction is about perfect timing, perfect words, perfect effort. But women don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with how you make them feel in that moment. So stop trying to change the weather. Start learning how to read it. That's where the real power is. Here's the next truth that will flip everything you thought you knew. Women don't fall in love with logic. They fall in love with feelings. Ask a woman why she's with her boyfriend, and she'll give you a neat little list. He's funny. He's kind. He has a good job. Sounds logical. Right. But that's not the real reason. That's the story she built after she already felt the pull. It's like asking someone why they love chocolate. They'll say it's sweet, it tastes good. But the real reason is a mix of chemicals in the brain they don't even notice. The feeling came first. The explanation came second. I learned this watching one of my friends. She always said her type was tall, dark, handsome, ambitious. But then she fell head over heels for a short, pale guy who barely had a job. On paper, he checked none of her boxes, but she felt something around him she couldn't explain, and that was all it took. That's the paradox. Women don't actually know what they want until they feel it. And this is where men go wrong. They try to logic their way into attraction. They highlight their job, their income, their stability, like they're giving a PowerPoint presentation. On slide 3, you'll see my excellent credit score. It doesn't work, because logic never creates desire. Women live by what I call the retrospective narrative principle. They experience the emotion first, then build the story around it. Attraction is backwards from what most men assume. The feeling comes first. The explanation comes second. Always. And here's the dangerous mistake: taking her words at face value. She says she wants this, she wants that. A tall man, a nice guy, a provider. But the man she falls for often looks nothing like the list, because the list is logic. The attraction is emotion. Stop thinking you can argue your way into her heart, because attraction isn't chosen, it's triggered. And here's a truth that's going to sting: what women say they want and what they actually feel are two different universes. Ask a woman what kind of man she wants, and you'll hear the usual checklist. A nice guy, someone thoughtful, someone who brings me flowers, someone who always shows up. And as a man, you listen, you take notes, you try to become exactly what she described. You buy the flowers, you hold every door, you make yourself endlessly available. You think, if I give her what she says she wants, she'll finally see my value. But then you watch her fall for the guy who forgets her birthday, the guy who shows up late, the guy who doesn't follow half the rules she swore were important. And you're standing there holding roses, wondering, what just happened? I had a friend who lived this nightmare. He was the perfect gentleman, always polite, always reliable. He treated his girlfriend like a queen. But 3 months in, she broke up with him for a bartender who lived with his mom and had no plan for the future. Why? Because that guy made her feel something unpredictable. Excitement, passion, a roller coaster she couldn't walk away from. Here's the paradox. Women don't fall for the man who checks the boxes. They fall for the man who moves their emotions. What she says is logical. What she feels is primal. Saying and feeling are different languages, and feelings always win. This is where men get trapped. They think consistency, reliability, and being the safe option will make them stand out. But to a woman, safety without excitement feels like watching paint dry. Comfortable, maybe, but forgettable. So here's stop chasing what she says. Start paying attention to what she responds to, because attraction isn't built on promises. It's built on emotions she can't explain and can't resist. Here's a brutal equation you need to tattoo on your brain. The more you need her, the less she wants you. Attraction dies in the shadow of neediness. The moment your world starts to orbit around her, she feels it. And when she feels it, the spark fades. Most men don't see this happening. They think devotion equals love. They clear their schedules. They stop seeing their friends. They change their hobbies to match hers. Before long, they're no longer a man with his own life. They're just a satellite spinning around her. And then they wonder why she gets bored, why she starts pulling away, why she doesn't look at them the same. I lived this once. There was a girl I really wanted. I thought if I made her my priority, if I showed her how much I cared, she'd finally choose me. So I canceled plans. I bent my personality to fit hers. I became predictable, always available, always ready to please. At first, she smiled. But then I noticed the distance, the slower replies, the excuses. Eventually, she left. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I became too available, too safe, too needy. Here's the paradox. A woman is most attracted when she feels you don't need her, even if you want her. Women are wired to crave challenge, mystery, uncertainty, not because they're playing games, but because uncertainty sparks emotion. The unknown creates tension. Tension creates attraction. When you strip away that tension by being too available, too predictable, too certain, you kill the very spar you're trying to protect. So remember this validation, attention, approval. The more you chase them, the further they run. True desire comes when she feels your life is full. Your world is steady, with or without her. Because neediness doesn't pull a woman closer. It pushes her away faster than anything else. Here's the irony. Most men can't swallow being the perfect guy is the fastest way to get dumped. Sounds insane, right? But think about it. The guy who never disagrees, the guy who never pushes back, the guy who shows up on time, does everything right, and never creates conflict. He doesn't spark attraction. He smothers it. I had a friend like this. He was a successful lawyer, good-looking, smart, and genuinely one of the kindest men I knew. He treated every woman like royalty. No games, no drama, just pure devotion. But here's the problem. None of his relationships lasted longer than 3 months. You know why? Because he was too perfect, too safe, too predictable. Dating him was like watching paint dry. His girlfriend said they wanted stability, but stability without emotion is boredom. Eventually, one of his exes left him for a bartender who lived with his ma and had a gambling problem. Sounds crazy. Right, but that bartender was unpredictable. One day he was romantic. The next he was distant. One day he was talking about the future. The next he wasn't sure. It was a roller coaster. And she got addicted to the ride. Here's the paradox: women would rather feel chaos than feel nothing. That doesn't mean women like being treated badly. It means they crave emotion, the highs, the lows, the tension, the passion. The perfect man removes all of that. He makes her feel safe. Yes, but safe without excitement feels like being wrapped in a warm blanket in a locked room. Comfortable, but lifeless. Most men think reliability and consistency are the ultimate keys. I'll always be there for you. You can count on me. I'm not like other guys. But that's exactly the problem. If she knows exactly how the movie ends, why should she keep watching? So don't aim to be perfect. Aim to be real, strong, unpredictable. Because perfection isn't attractive. It's boring. And boredom kills attraction faster than anything else. Here's something that drives men insane when women talk. They're not looking for solutions. They're looking for connection. Sounds backwards. Right, a man hears a problem and instantly shifts into problem-solving mode. That's how we bond. That's how we show love. But to a woman, offering quick fixes often feels like dismissal. She's venting about her boss, and you say, "Just tell him no." You think you're helping. She hears, "Your feelings don't matter. Just fix it." That's why men and women clash so much in conversations. We communicate to exchange information. Women communicate to process emotions. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, my girlfriend came home furious about a coworker. She ranted for 20 minutes straight. I cut her off and said, "Just report her to HR." Done. I thought I nailed it. Instead, she exploded. She said I never listened. I never understood her. I sat there confused. Like, didn't I just solve the whole thing? Here's the paradox to her. Solving the problem wasn't the point. Feeling understood was. Women often speak in subtext. When she says, "It's fine," it probably isn't fine. When she says, "I don't care where we eat," she might care a lot. When she says, "We need to talk," your relationship might be hanging by a thread. She's not lying. In her mind, the message is obvious from tone, context, body language. That's how women communicate with each other, layers of meaning under the words. They assume you can read it too. The problem is, most men need subtitles. And here's where relationships break. Men hear the words. Women expect them to hear the emotions behind the words. When men miss the signal, women feel unseen. When women feel unseen, attraction fades. Stop treating conversations like puzzles to solve. Start treating them like doors to her emotional world. Because women don't fall for men who always have the answers. They fall for men who make them feel heard. Here's the next truth. Most men never hear men and women are wired for sex completely differently. For men, desire is like a light switch, on or off. We see an attractive woman. Boom, we're ready. Simple, straightforward. But for women, it's not a switch. It's a soundboard with 100 different sliders and knobs. Lighting, mood, tone of voice, confidence, the last thing you said 3 hours ago, even how she feels about her body that day. Every detail can move the dial up or down. That's why you can be with a woman who's deeply attracted to you one night, and the very next day, she feels nothing changed. Yet her desire has shifted completely. It's not random. It's responsive. I saw this play out in one of my past relationships. We had an amazing night out. She was laughing, holding my hand, pulling me closer. The next morning, she felt distant, cold. I racked my brain, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Turns out it wasn't me. She'd gotten a stressful text from work. Her whole mood changed, and with it, her desire. Here's the paradox for women. Sexuality isn't about the physical urge, it's about the emotional environment. That's why single women can go months without even thinking about sex. Then, in the right relationship, want it almost every day. Not because their biology turned on and off, but because the context shifted. And this is where men lose the plot. They think pushing harder, trying to convince her, or showing off physically will spark desire. But it doesn't. If the emotional sliders aren't in the right place, nothing happens. The secret isn't more pressure. It's creating the right environment. The kind where she feels safe, desired, understood, and excited. Because a man's sexuality might start in the body. But a woman's sexuality, it starts in her mind and in her emotions. It's called preselection, and it explains why the guy with a girlfriend suddenly gets more attention than he ever did when he was single. Think of it like restaurants. You walk past an empty one and wonder, what's wrong with it? You see another packed with people and think, that place must be good. Women's attraction works the same way. A man with no female attention looks suspicious. A man surrounded by options signals value. I remember this happening to me. When I was single, it felt like no one noticed. But the moment I started dating someone, suddenly other women were texting, smiling, flirting more. Nothing about me had changed. What changed was perception. One woman's approval made me more attractive to others. Here's the paradox. Desire isn't just about how she feels about you. It's about how she sees other women feel about you. This also explains retroactive jealousy. A woman can be lukewarm about you, but the moment she thinks she might lose you to someone else, her interest skyrockets. Not because she's playing games, but because potential loss triggers emotional investment. That's why being too available, too easy, kills attraction. If there's no risk of loss, there's no urgency. But when she sees you're busy, you have options, or you're not always there, suddenly you become valuable. Scarcity creates desire. Most men make the mistake of putting all their attention on one woman, thinking loyalty will make her choose them. But loyalty without options doesn't increase value, it decreases it. So don't be the empty restaurant begging for customers. Be the full one people line up for. Because in female psychology, preselection isn't manipulation. It's proof of value and proof of desire. Modern women are caught between what society tells them and what their biology still craves. Society says, be independent, be strong. You don't need a man. Biology whispers, you're drawn to strength, to leadership, to protection. That's why so many women say they want one thing, but feel attraction to the opposite. She'll say she wants a sensitive man who shares his emotions, but who makes her heart race the stoic man who stays calm under pressure. She'll say she wants an equal partner, someone who lets her lead. But who does she melt for? The man who takes charge without hesitation. This isn't hypocrisy, it's conflict. Two forces pulling her in opposite directions. I once dated a woman who swore up and down she wanted a man who was open and emotionally vulnerable. So I tried. I told her all my insecurities. I shared my fears, my doubts. At first, she nodded along, but I noticed something shift. The more I opened up, the less attracted she seemed. The spark faded. Weeks later, she left. Not because she didn't want honesty, but because what she felt didn't match what she said. Here's the paradox. A woman may respect the version of you society tells her to want, but she only desires the version her biology responds to. This inner conflict is why modern relationships often feel chaotic. Women are pulled between empowerment and instinct, between the safety of equality and the thrill of dominance, between the idea of independence and the craving for strength. And here's where men go wrong. They only listen to her words. They ignore her actions. They try to become the ideal man she describes, instead of the man she actually responds to. Because in the battle between social programming and biology wins every time. Here's a truth that stings both men and women. Men and women peak at different times in the dating game. At 23, a woman has more options than she'll ever have again. Men line up for her attention. She's at the height of her beauty, her youth, her desirability. Meanwhile, a 23-year-old man is usually just starting out. He hasn't built status, resources, or confidence yet. His options are limited. Fast forward to 35. The tables flip. The man who built himself his career, his body, his mindset now has more options than ever. Women who once ignored him start noticing. Meanwhile, many women at 35 feel the pressure of time, and their options shrink compared to their younger years. It sounds cruel, but it's reality. I saw this happen with one of my female friends. At 25, she was rejecting good men left and right, always waiting for the perfect guy. By 32, the panic hit. Suddenly, the same men she ignored before seemed worth considering. Not because she changed her standards, but because her circumstances changed. Here's the paradox: when women have the most power in the dating market, they often waste it chasing perfection. By the time they're ready to settle, their leverage has declined. For men, it's the opposite. When they're young, they're overlooked. But if they put in the work, time becomes their ally. They grow into their value. This mismatch is why so many couples struggle with timing. The girl who could have chosen wisely at 24 waits too long. The guy who was invisible at 24 becomes highly desired at 34. The paths cross too late. It's not fair. But dating isn't fair. It's biology. It's timing. And it's brutal. So the lesson is simple, men. Play the long game. Women, don't waste the window, because whether you like it or not, time is the most ruthless player in the dating game. Here's one of the most painful realities for men. The friend zone isn't friendship, it's unpaid emotional labor. You think you're building a connection. You're there for her when she's upset, and you listen to her stories about other men. You give her advice, comfort, even gifts. Deep down, you hope she'll realize how much you care and choose you. But here's the brutal truth. She already knows how much you care. She just doesn't feel it for you. I had a buddy who lived in this trap for years. He was basically her therapist. She'd call him at 2 a.m., crying about another guy. He'd drop everything, drive across town, sit with her, reassure her. She'd thank him, hug him, and then the next day, run back to the same guy who broke her heart. And my buddy, he stayed on call, waiting, hoping his loyalty would eventually win her over. It never did. Here's the paradox: she values your support, but she doesn't desire you. In her mind, she's being honest. She says, "We're just friends." She means it. She's not trying to be cruel. She's compartmentalizing. To her, you're an emotional safety net, not a romantic option. And that's what most men don't understand. They think more kindness, more effort, more patience will flip the switch. But attraction doesn't work that way. Desire can't be negotiated or earned through favors. So here's the rule if you want her. Don't settle for being her emotional tampon. Don't trade your time, energy, and heart for scraps of attention. Because the longer you stay in the friend zone, the more you kill your own self-respect. Friendship is mutual. The friend zone isn't. It's one-sided investment with zero return. And in love, that's the worst deal you could ever sign. Here's the ultimate paradox. Women want to surrender, but only to a man strong enough to handle them. That's why they test you. That's why they push your buttons. That's why they challenge your boundaries. Not because they want to break you, but because they want to know if you can hold steady. Most men fail this test in two ways. Some crumble under pressure. They give in to every demand. They bend, fold, and eventually lose all respect. Others overcompensate with aggression. They become controlling, harsh, even tyrannical. That doesn't inspire trust, it inspires fear. But the rare few, they stay calm, solid, grounded. They don't crack, and they don't crush. They hold their frame no matter what storm comes their way. And those are the men women trust enough to follow. I saw this in a past relationship. My girlfriend picked fights out of nowhere. At first, I thought she was just being dramatic. So I tried to appease her, to smooth things over, to keep the peace. But the more I folded, the more she pushed. One night, I finally stopped. I looked at her, calm, and said, "You can throw a storm if you want. I'm not moving." The fight ended right there. Not because I yelled, not because I gave in, but because she finally felt safe, knowing I wouldn't break. Here's the paradox. A woman's surrender isn't weakness, it's trust. And she'll only surrender to a man who proves he's strong enough, steady enough, to carry that trust. So don't crumble, don't rage. Be the rock in the chaos. Because women don't follow the loudest man or the nicest man. They follow the man who can't be shaken. Attraction isn't logical, and it isn't negotiable. You can't buy it with flowers. You can't beg for it with loyalty. And you can't argue it into existence with words. Attraction either sparks or it doesn't. Most men waste years chasing in the wrong way. They overthink texts, play the perfect nice guy, or pour everything into one woman, hoping she'll finally see their value. But the harder you chase, the less she feels. The more you give without boundaries, the faster she loses interest. Here's the paradox that changes ethos. Everything, the less you need her, the more she desires you. Women don't fall for men who orbit their world. They fall for men who carry their own world with or without her. Strength, presence, mystery, calm in the storm. That's what creates real pull. So stop chasing validation. Stop negotiating for attraction. Start building yourself into the kind of man who doesn't break under pressure. The kind of man who can't be shaken. Because once you do, you'll never worry about texts, mixed signals, or rejection the same way again. And if this hit you hard, don't just nod and scroll. Take action. Rethink the way you approach women. Rethink the way you carry yourself. Because the rules of attraction won't change, but you can. Play the game with awareness, or walk away from it with power. The choice is yours. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.